Hello and welcome to another quick video from me, this tutor. And in this video, we're looking at the AQA topic, Britain, Health and the People, and we're going to look at the skill of comparing two time periods. We're going to look at medieval public health and Renaissance public health, and see if we can explain two ways that they're similar. As I said, in the AQA exam, we have question 3, which is explain two ways, and often we have to explain how two different things are very, very similar. And so in today's lesson, we're going to revise medieval public health around the Black Death and Renaissance public health around about the time of the Great Plague, and we're going to explain two ways that they're similar. But firstly, we're going to have a little quiz just to recap our knowledge. So have a look over my revision guide pages and then get ready for a quick quiz. So here is our quick quiz, 8 questions about public health in the medieval time and Renaissance. So have a look through these questions. You can find it in the revision guide lesson and look through the pages and then see if you can answer the quiz. So pause me now and give it a go. Okay, so here's the answers then. So name the mayor of London who built lots of privies. Privies are toilets at this time, so outside toilets that maybe have a sort of long drop underneath into a cesspit. And he built them along the River Thames so that all the waste would go in the river and flow off downriver, presumably safely away from the people in London. So this was actually the pantomime character Dick Whittington, who was a real mayor of London, and he built those toilets. So an easy to remember example. Where in medieval England might you find sewers and clean water supplies? So you might find them in a monastery. So a good example of religion maintaining the ancient ideas of good public health with clean water and sewers. However, it's a bit of a limitation also because it wasn't shared with towns and villages. It was the monastic life that had cleanliness. Okay, so who ordered streets of London to be cleaned at the time of Black Death due to his belief in miasma and bad air? King Edward III. So an idea of government action in this time period of trying to clean up the towns and cities. Name the major disease that took place in London in 1665. So that's the Great Plague of London. And we'll talk about that in our lesson today, and we'll have a couple more questions on it in a moment as well. So name the nighttime job people had to go around cleaning out cesspits and cleaning up waste, and that was a gong farmer. So a gong farmer would be paid by individuals or maybe even the local council to clear out all the cesspits. A cesspit is what you'd find underneath the privy or a toilet, and it would gather all the waste and they'd put it on a cart and carry it out of town and dump it off somewhere, presumably relatively safely. Question number 6. During the Great Plague of London, people who had the disease had a cross marked on their door and obviously had to stay in there for 40 days, 40 nights. So what was this called? Well, that's called quarantine, actually after the French sort of numbers, obviously, as well. And how did some women help to stop spread of the Great Plague? And so they were women searchers. They would go around looking for ill people. And then once they'd found an ill person, question number 8, who would obviously guard the door during that quarantine? The watchman. So you would have this quarantine idea of women would go around searching. If they found somebody ill, they'd have the X marked on the door, as it were, and then the watchman would watch them. And if they were still safe after the quarantine time, they'd be let out, and it was helping to contain the illness, of course. So let's now think about the question. So the question says, explain two ways that public health in the time of the Black Death and public health in the time of the Great Plague of London were similar. So this is the standard question 3 in the AQA exam. Let's have a think about the wording of this question. You've got some phrases there, explain two ways. The whole question would say, give reference to both time periods in there as well. But hopefully the question itself just leads you to that conclusion as well. So start to make a list in your revision guide then. What would you do to answer this question successfully? What do you think is in the mark scheme? So pause me now and have a think, and then I'll share some ideas. Okay, so here's what I've said. So first you need to focus on the topic you're given. So in this particular question, we need to focus on public health, not treatments, not surgery, public health. We're also given 2 clear time periods to focus on as well. Now, we're not necessarily focusing on the Black Death and on the Great Plague. It says in the time of, so be aware of that in the question. Now, we need to set up arguments for using our peel paragraphs. So we're going to structure in our peel paragraphs. We're using 2 peel paragraphs, as it says, explain two ways. And obviously, we're therefore going to give clear points, and we're going to argue something. So one way they're similar is because, and give an idea. We're then going to back up with examples. Now, not just a general example, but an example from both time periods. We're going to say, for example, in the Black Death era, this happened. Similarly, in the Great Plague era, this happened. We need to describe both. As an examiner who marks questions regularly for this paper, There's a lot of students who give general comments, say in both time periods it was dirty. That's too vague. You're not going to get good marks for that. So an example from both times. Then explain why they're similar. So this is similar because, and explain why. You can link to a wider idea. However, that's only necessary really if you've still got a little bit more to say. Because the way this question works is it's about the complexity of your response. So if you give quite a simple similarity with some nice examples and explained, you might get 5 to 6 marks. However, if you're giving a complicated response, and that might require furthermore to really develop it, if you're giving a complicated idea, you're going to get in the 7 to 8 marks. So it's about how complicated is your idea, rather than simply explaining wider and further. So let's give this a go with some planning. So firstly, list some examples from both time periods in the planning box in your revision guide. So what's happening in the Black Death with public health, and what's happening in the Great Plague? Remember, public health is how people are trying to prevent disease, trying to keep themselves clean and healthy. Not treatments, not surgery. So list some ideas now. Okay, so here's some of my ideas, and some of them are taken from the quiz. So in the Black Death time, we've got Edward III was asking people to clean up. We've got government was starting to take action by banning market traders from dropping waste and telling them to clean up. Dick Whittington, the Mayor of London, built privies. Individuals were responsible for cleanliness outside their home and were paying gong farmers to empty cesspits. So not just government, but individuals as well. And some cities like Norwich and Gloucester closed their gates during the Black Death. You could generally say, of course, also that during the Black Death, 40 to 50% of the people died, which suggests public health was pretty terrible. So what about during the Great Plague? People believed in stopping miasma to improve health. Plague doctors used sweet-smelling flowers to purify the air. They had the big beak nose, they had gowns, all of it about trying to stop bad air getting to them. Government banned trade between England and Scotland to stop the spread of the plague. Also, you could talk about other things that were banned. They banned theatre companies moving around, etc. as well. People with the plague were quarantined for 40 days and watchmen ensured they did not leave their home. So we've got that quarantine idea. The government banned wooden houses afterwards because we had the Great Fire of London. So again, in the era of this, we've got improved safety of housing. And public health remained poor with cesspits, open sewers and a lack of clean water supplies. And many thousands of people died due to the Great Plague. Are there some similarities here? Can you see links between them? Now, there might be some basic links like people died. Okay, but try and think about more complicated ones. And the easy way to gather complicated ones is, can you see factors of change? Can you see different factors linking? So government action, for instance, or individual genius, or war. Okay, can you see some of those obvious factors we often talk about in the ideas? So here's what I've noticed then. So you might have noticed the government is involved in both. So government action, Edward III, telling people to clean up. Government banning street traders from leaving a mess in the Black Death era. Government banning wooden houses. Government bringing in quarantine laws. Those are all government actions in both eras. We've got miasma in both time periods. So miasma is going to lead to better public health. People are going to believe in being clean and tidy to get rid of smells and tidy up dirt. So we've got Edward III in the public health era, and obviously we've got Great Plague, the plague doctors, and the quarantine ideas about miasma as well. And finally, we have stopping people moving around. Again, government action here, or local government action. So this belief in stopping people moving will stop the spread of disease with the closing of cities in the Black Death and a banning of trade and banning of people moving around during the Great Plague. So we have a good range of ideas here. So how then are we going to structure this answer? So here is a writing frame. We're going to say something like, one way that public health during the Black Death was similar to public health during the Great Plague was, and introduce a reason. So maybe that was because government was getting involved in people's health. And we're going to say, for example, during the Black Death, this happened. Similarly, during the Great Plague, this happened. And then say, these are similar because. And we're only going to do it furthermore if we really want to add a bit more complicated ideas to it and we've not quite really got complicated enough to get to the top band. So let's give this a go now, writing together. So I'm going to start it off for you with an opening sentence because I want to talk about government because I want to get to that factor and try and give a more complicated response straight away. So I've said one way the public health during the Black Death was similar to public health during the Great Plague was that government was becoming far more involved. Okay, so how would you support that? Look back through your notes, the revision guide, look back through this video. So for example, during the Black Death, this happened. Similarly, during the Great Plague, this happened. In the revision guide, write your response, adding some examples. Pause me now and off you go. Okay, so here's what I've said. So, for example, during the Black Death, local governments started to lock their city gates. Similarly, during the Great Plague, the government banned the movement of traders, in particular people who would trade between Scotland and England. So I'm going to say these are similar because, and give a bit more detail. Now, you may have done slightly better than me with your Black Death example by naming some places like Bristol, Gloucester or Norwich, famous sort of old cities with walls and gates. So that would be really good if you did better than me. Now, you could try and explain, how can we explain that the government is realising that they need to close the gates? What do they believe in now? If they're closing gates and they're stopping people moving around, what do they believe is the cause of disease here? Can we explain why there's a similarity? Okay, so pause me now and away you go. Okay, so here's what I've said. So I've said these are similar because in both times the government realised they could do more to stop the spread of disease by stopping person-to-person contact, because that might have been spreading infections. So that would be a really good idea to talk about. Okay. Now there might be a little bit more to say. Can we say any more? So furthermore, they're similar because both times it's a more influence of government. Can you think of anything else in the plan or other wider ideas you've read about? Is there any more to say that government is involved? If you can say it now, go for it. Okay, so I found something. So here's what I've gone for. So I said, furthermore, they are similar because in both times the people started to have more influence on the government. After Black Death, peasants became more wealthy and had more influence, and around the time of the Great Plague, the Civil War had taken place and Parliament ruled the country. This means public health improved as the people would have demanded more healthy conditions to live in. Okay, so it's slightly tenuous, but I'm trying to get a wider idea, but that society is influencing government to some extent and government has to act. Let's go for a second idea. So I'm not going to talk you through this one in detail. You can write this yourself. So go for a second way that public health was similar in both these eras. Now you've got miasma as a nice simple idea to talk about if you want to go for that. So pause you now and give it a go. So I've gone for a second way that public health during the Black Death was similar to public health during the Great Plague. So both use miasma theories to influence their public health. For example, during the Black Death, King Edward asked London to be cleaned. Similarly, during the Great Plague, people were quarantined in their homes and doctors wore their gowns and the beaks, etc. We've got all those bits of evidence about miasma. It should be quite easy to do that. But then we've got to explain. So these are similar about public health because it shows that people and the government made a connection between their environment and the dirt and smell and disease. This led governments and individuals to clean their streets and ban smelly, dirty things like market people dumping waste. Okay, that would be plenty, but if you can think of furthermore. So furthermore, they are similar because both times had badly organised urban areas lacking sewers and cleanliness. This led to increased smells and cesspits and outdoor latrines. This clearly led to people linking dirt and smell to disease in this time. Okay, so that's probably quite a complicated response. It's a simple idea, but the depth has made it slightly more complicated. So hopefully with those two paragraphs, I will get full marks. You'll notice there is no conclusion because there's no judgment to be made here. I'm just asked to explain two ways they're similar. Okay, well, I hope you found that useful. And if you did, then obviously take a look at my revision guide. There's loads more questions in there that I'm talking you through to help you get top marks in your History GCSE. Also, take a look at my playlists and my YouTube channel. Loads and loads of help there. Okay, and do subscribe to that, and I'll keep updating videos as and when I make them. Okay, well, I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye for now.